What's up, fellow film fanatics? Today we're going to deconstruct the key themes of the 97 romantic comedy As Good As It Gets, including the union of the divine feminine with the divine masculine, the battle between chaos and order, and the usage of symbolic color coding. All this from a 90s rom-com? Just wait. What if cinema love letters is as good as it gets? Hello again, and welcome back to Cinema Love Letters, where we dive in, dissect, and disembowel our favorite films, all in the name of love. Today we're talking about the 1997 romantic comedy As Good As It Gets, starring Jack Nicholson as Melvin Udall. As Good As It Gets is a masterclass in effective characterization and building conflict through relationships and oppositional personalities. At its core, the theme of the film is chaos versus order, with chaos being represented by the life and situation of Helen Hunt's Carol Connelly, and order represented by the OCD-plagued Melvin Udall. These characters respectively represent the divine feminine and the divine masculine. This is important to understand because, in addition to the film's excellent acting, writing, editing, direction, and soundtrack, it is these core thematic elements, the unification of the divine masculine with the divine feminine, the emergence of order from chaos, and the inclusion of chaos to refresh systems suffering from overbearing order that give the film its emotional punch. Because these mythological concepts date back to the beginning of history, ultimately, these themes speak to our deepest and most rudimentary psychological need: to procreate, copulate, and aid in the continuance of the species. What it all ultimately boils down to, the chaos versus order and masculine versus feminine themes, is sex.
I'm not going to sleep with you. Not ever.
As Good As It Gets is also a film about facing and overcoming human anxieties. Melvin lives with severe OCD, Carol with sexual repression and a developing Oedipal complex regarding her son, and Simon Bishop with depression and anxiety from a home invasion coupled with repressed anger toward his parents for evicting him when he came out of the closet. These characters, with their human anxieties and individual weaknesses, will end up needing one another to overcome these issues, which will illuminate as we progress.
I'm just kidding. I wanted to see what you'd do.
The opening shot of great films often encompasses a message that relates to the overall theme of the film. In the opening shot, we see Melvin's neighbor open her front door, which is green. This is the beginning of the color code that runs throughout the film, as green and objects from the plant kingdom represent the chaotic natural world, directly associated with the divine feminine. The neighbor emphasizes this connection when she expresses,
"It's tulip season today, and I'm oh so happy."
This is, of course, until she catches sight of Melvin Udall, the very sight of which ruins her mood and causes her to abandon her trip completely. While it's a fun way to start off a comedy, this is more than just a cute joke. This shot and the meaning behind it encapsulate the primary theme of the film, the union of the chaotic divine feminine with the orderly divine masculine. Now, the connection between the divine feminine and the concept of chaos is not a knock against women. These are philosophical concepts that are drawn from ancient mythology. It originates from the idea that in its primordial state, the world was nothing but chaos, a formless void from which order arose in the form of human societies. Nature, trees, plants, forests, and jungles have all been used to represent chaos, for in the wild, plants tend to grow without structure or planning. The concept of primordial chaos is connected to the feminine because it is from the feminine from which all life is produced. Therefore, the feminine is often utilized to represent the chaotic natural world, while the divine masculine is often represented by an old king, signifying the structure, society, and order that springs forth from the original chaos. So, in short, divine feminine equals chaos, divine masculine equals order. We can see this concept in other films, and oftentimes the divine feminine archetype is sexualized in some way or another. One example is the 1967 film The Graduate, in which Mrs. Robinson is characterized with cheetah print clothing, symbolic of nature, and is constantly embroidered with greenery, plants, and elements of the chaotic natural world. Jennifer Lawrence's character from Darren Aronofsky's Mother is another example of the divine feminine archetype, as is Jessie Buckley's character from Alex Garland's Men. And this neighbor woman is the pure symbolic encapsulation of the chaotic divine feminine. The flowers on her sweater and shirt, the green door she lives behind, and her immediate proclamation of it being tulip season are evidence of this. And it's her reaction to Melvin that gives us a hint of what we're about to witness.
Come on, sweetie.
Melvin Udall has fallen completely out of favor with the divine feminine, and he must go on an internal journey of discovery and change to earn her respect, good graces, and to find the one thing that's missing from his solitary life.
Come on, go for a ride.
Now, one of the most impressive elements of the film is how the writers craft Jack Nicholson's character into a homophobic, sexist, racist curmudgeon, while also somehow getting us to follow and cheer him on until the very end. I mean, we really shouldn't like this guy. His first act is the attempted murder of a helpless animal.
This is New York. If you can make it here, You can make it anywhere.
And while Scarface, Breaking Bad, and Nightcrawler are successful at initiating the viewer into being a third-party participant on the journeys of despicable main characters, those stories keep us watching due to the violence and exaggerated drama of those characters' worlds. Melvin's world has no shootouts or high-speed chases, and our grumpy main character is a boring old writer. So the fact that we're willing to follow him at all is a testament to the skills of the creative team. We see immediately why Melvin has fallen into disfavor with the divine feminine. He lobs homophobic and racist remarks at Simon and Frank when they ask about the dog, showing more disrespect for members of Mother Nature's tribe. Here Melvin is clad in a dark red shirt, a color the film codes to represent love. And at the beginning of the film, Melvin is devoid of love, which is why all the brightness and cheeriness has been bleached from the shirt. This idea of Melvin's life being devoid of love is punctuated when Simon throws a challenge at him, one which will stay with Melvin through the entire film.
Hope you find him. Love that dog.
You don't love anything, Mr. Udall.
Now, it's been said that to make an audience care for a reprehensible character, it's important to show empathetic human traits early in the film. Leon the Professional tackles this by showing Leon watering a plant, which is borrowed by Dan Gilroy in the film Nightcrawler. Breaking Bad shows Walter White standing up for his disabled son in the first episode. These examples show a relatable, empathetic chink in the impenetrable armor of the shameful character, which subconsciously causes the audience to connect. Melvin's empathetic characterization begins the second he walks into his apartment. We see the symptoms of Melvin's obsessive-compulsive disorder as he counts his movements, throws away a pair of expensive leather gloves, and uses a new bar of soap once before tossing it. And this is clever characterization for Melvin's role as the orderly divine masculine. His OCD means everything is not only in a general order, but in perfect order. And in these stories, the king's old order was often used to represent a philosophy or way of living that had become stagnant and required refreshment. This idea of letting go of old orders is also a key theme for Helen Hunt's Carol Connelly, but we'll get to that later. And we get the sense, from the defects in his personality, that Melvin's orderliness has gone too far. Nothing matters to him other than the order of his life. Everything else is disposable. Now, suffering from OCD might make us understand Melvin a little better, but it's not enough to endear him to a widespread audience.
Shut up, kids!
In the next scene, we see an empty red chair as we pan across Melvin's living room, red again representing love, and the absence of form in the chair representing the lack of love in Melvin's life. This idea is emphasized when we hear what Melvin is writing.
At last, she was able to define love. Love was.
Melvin Udall is a man searching for love.
Son of a bitch!
And perhaps searching for love and not finding it is enough to make someone a little harsh, a little more obsessed with what's solid and orderly, as those things provide a sense of identity, security, while the fluid, ethereal, uncertain concept of searching for love creates questions, anxiety, and fears that what we are now is not good enough. The creators give the viewer a reason to follow Melvin. The search for love. The question is, can Melvin let go of his manicured orderliness, find a way to show respect for the divine feminine, and discover love before the film is over? Now, despite their opposing personalities, Melvin and Simon are actually quite alike. They're both artists, they're both cut off from the divine feminine, and they're essentially the two opposing results of creative children being raised in homes of excessive masculine orderliness. After Verdell the dog is returned by the kindly maintenance man, Simon and Frank go to Melvin's door. Here, Melvin is clad in a shade of violet, the same color as Simon. Violet is another important color coded into the film, as characters who adorn this shade become engrossed in the suffering of their anxieties. For Simon, his deep insecurity is the destroyed relationship with his parents, which occurred because Simon's father caught him creating nude portraits of his mother, to which his father's response was to beat him and kick him out. In this scene, we would expect Simon to attack Melvin with all barrels blazing, as Melvin is truly guilty for what he's being accused of. Yet, because Simon fears the orderly divine masculine, which is exactly what Melvin encapsulates, he cowers from Melvin and lets the stronger man tear him down and slam the door in his face. But Melvin's deepest insecurities also come from living under the rule of the orderly divine masculine. Later in the film, Melvin confesses that when he was a child, his father used to smack him across the wrist if he made a mistake playing the piano. Sounds like a similar type of man as Simon's hard-nosed, brutal father. But instead of developing fear of the divine masculine, Melvin went the opposite way. He became more like his father in order to overcome him. But this is a facade. This becomes apparent when Frank takes matters into his own hands.
Oh! Don't touch! Don't touch! Don't touch! Shut up!
Melvin may not be afraid of Frank, but the act of having another man invade his personal space activates his OCD.
Assault and battery! and you're black!
We could also consider that angry Frank might remind Melvin of his own father, as he has a panic attack right there in the hallway. Now, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s Frank embodies the catalyst archetype, a character who serves to motivate the main characters onto the correct path, sort of like a guardian angel. Actors tend to get typecast into particular archetypes for portions of their careers, and it seems like during this time in the late 90s they were playing around with the idea of Cuba Gooding Jr. as a catalyst, guardian angel type character. Rod Tidwell and Jerry Maguire serves a similar function, and Albert in What Dreams May Come is a literal angel sent to help Robin Williams. Next, Melvin makes his way across the city of New York. As Good as It Gets might be one of the only major blockbuster films set in the city of New York that features 0 daytime establishing shots of the city. Now, perhaps a substantial portion of the film's $50 million budget went to Jack Nicholson's $15 million acting fee, which left them with less to work with on the production side, but I really don't think that was the case. The fact that the camera never rises above ground level psychologically keeps us focused on the situations and characters, the city not a character as it is in so many New York films, but instead a platform on which the drama can unfold. There's only one major wide shot of the city in the entire film, which comes at the halfway point when Carol makes a significant decision to go to Melvin's apartment. And it's specifically used to show Carol's psychological state as she travels out of her small, chaotic world into the larger one. The anxiety of the beautiful middle-class belle heading toward the great castle of the beast. The decision to keep the camera on the street is a pointed and purposeful choice of how and when to use the camera to best convey the story to the audience. It's one of my favorite aspects of the cinematography of the film.
Hospital?
Yes!
Next we meet Carol, who represents the chaotic divine feminine, basically a progeny of the neighbor woman seen in the first shot of the film, but one whose divine femininity has been obscured and hidden. Carol wears a black dress with flowers on it. The flowers represent her archetypal divine femininity, and the black dress represents the absence of a place for them to grow. Carol, despite being the nicer of the two characters, lives a life of chaotic disorder. Her day-to-day existence is punctuated by the unpredictable nature of her son's illness. Carol's first line of dialogue exemplifies the chaotic nature of her life.
I got a date tonight. I'm walking out the door. He says to me, "Mom, I promise not to get one of my fevers or coughs during your date."
Her date is preeminently threatened by chaos. When Melvin walks into the restaurant, we get a sense of his affection for Carol, as the director makes a point to show Carol physically touch Melvin to move him, juxtaposed against Melvin desperately trying to avoid people on the streets moments before. Carol recognizes and speaks to Melvin like an old friend, the original title of the screenplay, before Hans Zimmer suggested to James Brooks to change it to As Good as It Gets instead.
Good call!
When Melvin arrives, he is shut out of the waitress station, the red bars of the station acting as a physical barrier between Melvin's divine masculine order and Carol's divine feminine chaos, the same barrier represented by the slamming door of the neighbor woman in the opening of the film. Melvin takes it upon himself to accost the two sitting at the table, insulting them with some awful anti-Semitic comments.
Appetites aren't as big as your noses, huh?
What?
Now, the director of the film, JamesLBrooks, is himself Jewish, so I don't think the creators of the film have anything against Jews, or gays, or women. And despite his comments to Frank, we can actually assume that Melvin has no issue with African Americans, since the artwork hanging in his living room portrays a pair of African American men. Melvin's way of insulting and belittling people actually reminds me of the way men in gritty, rugged, hands-on professions speak to each other. And it's actually not meant to degrade, but is used as a means of building camaraderie and testing the will of new team members to see if they're capable of withstanding a little harshness.
What's happening out there?
Shall I describe it to you, or would you like me to find you a box?
Being constantly on the offensive is Melvin's way of trying to make the people around him tougher. We actually see Melvin use this unhealthy form of encouragement on Simon later when he's down and out.
No need to stop being a lady. Quit worrying. You'll be back on your knees in no time.
It's a bad habit, probably picked up from his father, whose harsh orderliness caused Melvin to develop this emotional armor. But there's a chink in Melvin's armor, and that chink is his attraction to Carol. For when Melvin finally sits down in his favorite booth, which is bright red, he looks like a happy puppy, in his place, being served by the beautiful Carol, going from one square moment to the next in the orderly fashion of his day. We see bits of chaotic nature at the table, and this is just exactly the right amount of chaos Melvin is willing to allow into his life. Melvin is in fact so comfortable with his orderly routine that he forgets himself with Carol.
You're gonna die soon with that diet, you know that.
Well, we're all gonna die soon. I will, you will, and it sure sounds like your son will.
Now, he's not an idiot. He's a writer who presumably writes about the lives of human beings, and so the concept of a mother losing her son being tragic and horrible is certainly not going to be lost on him. We should also note the violet color embroidering the collar of Melvin's shirt. Carol absolutely annihilates Melvin, to which he has no response. Carol's characterization continues in the next scene, which lays out her unsuccessful date with a male suitor, who only seems interested in two things: having sex with Carol and bad magic tricks. But the problem with this guy is that he, like Melvin, is not worthy of connecting to the divine feminine, nor is Carol ready to be taken by the divine masculine force due to her Oedipal complex in relation to her son. We see this at play when Carol makes a face as the guy is licking her forehead, which is totally understandable because, well, I mean, seriously?
She just loved to get down with sex all the time. She was like, yeah, let's go.
But she moves past this and seems to be getting into things when he grabs her breast, which makes her release a nervous laugh. Sexual repression. Perhaps it's been so long since she's engaged with a masculine force that she's actually forgotten how to respond to being felt up by a male suitor. We then see from the date's response that he has no patience or love for the divine feminine, punctuated when the date gets spit on his hand, which is enough to send him packing. Carol's black dress has little hexagonal windows with flowers in them, existing in a void of blackness, but still alive and still available to the right suitor. The film has now established both characters' current worlds. Melvin lives a harsh, systematically ordered existence, as predictable and neat as a military operation, while Carol's world is defined by surprises, fluidity, and chaotic disorder. But the one thing both characters are missing and searching for is love, a connection with the opposite sexual entity. Melvin's order needs a little chaos, and Carol's chaos needs a little order. The next time they see each other, Carol makes a point to ask Melvin,
What's with the plastic picnic wear?
Oh, I see the help. It's a judgment call.
showing curiosity about his divine masculine order. Melvin asks,
What's wrong with your son?
showing curiosity about Carol's divine feminine chaos. It's a nice interaction to make up for the heated one a couple scenes before, and a promise of what could develop between these characters. The inciting incident takes place when Simon's irresponsible manager hires a street worker as a portrait model and sends him to Simon's expensive high-rise. The street kid and his goons rob and then brutally assault Simon in his apartment. Right before the assault, as Simon realizes what's happening, he stares at Skeet's character and asks,
Why are you doing this?
This shows Simon's lack of connection to the divine masculine, and in a way, suggests a certain amount of naivete. We find out later that Simon has a similar response to his father when he's caught painting his mother in the nude.
I said, she's not naked. It's art. And he started hitting me.
In the harsh orderliness of the divine masculine world, little boys do not paint their moms in the nude, and real men don't ask, but take what they want, even if it means hurting someone. Simon wants the world to make sense, but it simply doesn't. Melvin gives Simon a taste of truth from the divine masculine perspective later in the film when he says,
Some of us have great stories, pretty stories that take place at lakes with boats and friends and noodle salad. What makes it so hard is not that you had it bad, but that you're that pissed that so many others had it good.
What he's suggesting here is that Simon maintains a childish, naive desire for things to be a certain, fair, even-keeled way, because he thinks that's how other people have it, when the fact is that this is not how the world works. And even though both Carol and Simon outwardly disagree with Melvin,
Not it at all, really.
Not it at all, huh?
we can see in Simon's face that he knows this might actually be true. After the assault, Frank forces Melvin to take care of Simon's dog for Dell, the physical embodiment of the divine feminine, a four-legged agent of chaos, now manifest inside the orderly world of Melvin's apartment.
Nobody's ever been in here before!
Hey, Frank.
But Melvin quickly develops an affection for the little dog. Kids seem to like him. He helps Melvin earn some brownie points with Carol, at least until his OCD screws that up.
So you're all set here.
And while walking down the sidewalk, Melvin notices the dog stepping over the cracks in the street just like he does. This fills Melvin with love toward the little dog, for trying to be more orderly like him. But Melvin says,
Don't be like me. Don't you be like me. You stay just the way you are, because you are a perfect man, and I'm going to take you home and get you something to eat.
This line is interesting because the idea of the coalition between the divine feminine and divine masculine is not for one side to become exactly like the other, but for both sides to borrow traits from one another to create a perfect union. Melvin goes home and finishes his 60-second novel, which he celebrates by stating,
Done. Yes, I hate the doggy. Yes, I hate the doggy. Ooh, 62 books. Done.
But it's clear that he doesn't hate the dog. This is proven moments later when Frank knocks on the door to let Melvin know that Simon will be taking the dog back tomorrow. Melvin no-sells his reaction to Frank.
Okay.
But the second he locks the door, panic and anxiety settle in, visibly noticeable from the sweat pouring from Melvin's neck. We see Melvin's soft side for the first time, a weakness that his father would surely have preferred were beaten out of him long ago. And this connection to his father's harsh rule is magnified by the fact that, after giving Verdell back to Simon, a teary-eyed Melvin plays the piano to cheer himself up. The same place where his father used to smack him for making mistakes, for being weak, for not being orderly enough. But Verdell has disrupted the order of Melvin's existence, and it'll never be the same again.
Over a dog.
Melvin is now thrown into a world of chaos. His next few actions can be seen as fruitless attempts to restore order to his existence.
Help!
First, Melvin sees his shrink, who condemns Melvin for barging into the office without an appointment and sends him packing. Second, Melvin goes to the restaurant but not only finds that Carol isn't working, but is also booted from the restaurant after an uncomfortable run-in with the hot-tempered manager.
Carol's last name. Connelly.
Third, Melvin goes to the home of Carol, desperate she returned to work so that the orderliness of his life might be restored, emphasized by the green shirt he wears, symbolic of the chaotic divine feminine he's allowed to enter his life.
I'm hungry.
Carol becomes enraged that Melvin tracked her to her home. In a crafty move, Melvin drops an under-the-radar compliment.
Why aren't you at work? You sick? You don't look sick.
This disarms Carol, and she allows him to stay. Melvin then meets Carol's son, Spencer, to whom he offers a bit of fatherly, good-natured advice.
You should answer someone when they speak to you.
Yet, from Carol's immediate response, she is clearly not ready for the inclusion of Melvin's divine masculine order in her home, which up to this point has been defined by divine feminine chaos. Melvin, having gained and lost the dog, an agent of the divine feminine, has started to realize that there is something to be gained from a union with the divine feminine, particularly creatively, which is emphasized later when Simon regains his creative spark after being exposed to the divine feminine in its rawest form. Carol is about to learn a similar lesson when she opts to accept Melvin's help in the form of a cab ride. Now, while men are not always the caretakers in a relationship, it is a role historically taken up by the more masculine partner. While Melvin may have little in the way of personality or physicality to offer Carol, he is a successful writer and has monetary means to assist her. And for those surviving in a world of chaos, like Carol and her son, the offer of security and a shield against uncontrolled disorder is certainly not nothing. Melvin then asks for his agent to have her doctor husband take care of Spencer. Melvin is so desperate to regain order in his life that he is willing to pay for the boy's medical care simply so that his program is unaffected, and he can get back to the small amount of love he was receiving from his daily interactions with Carol.
MD.
When Carol and Beverly meet with Dr. Bettis, the camera does a slow push through the kitchen into the dining room. We can note that the color green borders the characters around the table, as does a very prominent tree frog attached to a window. This is symbolic of the chaos of Carol's life coming into order, being suppressed by the presence of the doctor. There is a single bright green item on the table, positioned dead center, as if to symbolize the chaos which Dr. Bettis has been sent to address.
Well, the costs are going to be considerable, I'm afraid. But don't worry. Mr. Udall wants to be billed.
Just as order is being instituted in Carol's chaotic life, more chaos is being brought down upon Melvin, as Simon's housekeeper asks Melvin if he would be willing to walk Verdell until Simon feels better.
Absolutely.
While Melvin accepts, his treatment of the housekeeper shows he still has a long way to go in terms of treating the divine feminine with a measure of respect.
Open his curtains for him so he can see God's beautiful work.
Where do they teach you to talk like this? In some Panama City sailor want a hump bar? Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
We see Simon falling into chaos as he calls people asking for money. Melvin then antagonizes Simon in his hyper-masculine aggressive way, but Simon surprises Melvin by taking a swing at him, a sign of the necessary masculinity rising within Simon, but not yet enough. This point is emphasized with what happens next. Melvin tries to make Simon feel better about Verdell's apparent preference for Melvin by revealing that he carries a bag of bacon in his pocket. This, however, is immediately proven false, as Verdell still chooses Melvin over Simon, even after the transference of the bacon. Now, the divine feminine is always going to prefer the more masculine of its presented choices. It's a metaphorical representation of the question, why do good girls go for bad guys? It's not the badness that's attractive, but the overt masculinity. By choosing Melvin, it's a symbolic message that for Simon to evolve, he must also develop his more aggressive, orderly, masculine side. Now, in great films, at the midpoint, something will often happen that will create a massive shift that moves the action to the climax. The hard midpoint comes when Carol takes the train ride to Melvin's home in the city, where she demands to know why he chose to help her.
So you'd come back to work and wait on me.
Do you have some idea how strange that sounds?
And then it's Carol who says what everyone is thinking.
I will never sleep with you, never, ever.
Now, we can say with a high level of certainty that this accusation is false. While Melvin does have a strong attraction to Carol, he really doesn't expect sex as a receipt, and his actions really are being performed to get Carol back to work so that Melvin might return to the order established at the beginning of the film. But this interaction shows Melvin that returning to the pre-established order is no longer possible. Melvin must actually take things further, let go of some of his obsessive, controlling, orderly anxieties, and learn to build a new life with love in the picture. Carol's statement also re-emphasizes the challenge Simon made to Melvin in the first scene of the film, the search for love, or, in this case, the search for union with the divine feminine. We can also note that Carol's statement is a lie. She is sexually attracted to him, but she lies for the same reason she nervously laughed when her date felt her up earlier in the film. In some ways, Carol has been so wrapped up in the chaos of her life that she's forgotten what it means to be sexually wanted or to engage in a sexual manner. The way she hides her revealed breasts right before Melvin comes to the door is symbolic of this. This midpoint sets up the second half of the film. There's clear chemistry between these two characters, but we can see that their anxieties and psychological issues are keeping them apart. Melvin's next step is to pay a short visit to Simon, and we again see how similar they really are. This short scene can be interpreted as two artists commiserating on the depressing state of life lived under the absence of the divine feminine. And it's a moment that shows Melvin's first steps at trying to rectify and reestablish that connection.
I'm glad we did this.
Carol writes a long, neurotic letter to Melvin, born from the guilt over their interaction the previous evening. Her mother, Shirley, can see through her frustrated, intense facade and questions her need to write this letter. Carol then expresses a complex human experience regarding accepting positive change in our lives.
It's very weird now, not feeling that stupid panic thing inside me all the time. Without that, I just start thinking about myself, and what good does that ever get anybody?
And this is a common issue for many people. There are stories of released prisoners who purposely commit crimes so they can be returned to the comfort of what they knew, jail. When someone lives with a defined specific purpose for an amount of time, when that purpose ends, people often struggle to accept their new place in the world, even if that new place might be a better one than the one they're coming from. In this way, Carol has identified the distress that comes from the unknown, from leaving the discomfort of our previous existence and stepping into the light of a new world. It's terrifying for most people, and the only true antidote is faith. Melvin makes a similar statement to Simon in one of the final scenes of the film.
I can't get back to my own life. She's evicted me from my life.
Their involvement in one another's lives brings their old orders to forced ends. Carol's mother Shirley gives her some advice at the end of her monologue. She doesn't directly address anything Carol said, but simply tells her,
I want us to go out.
In other words, she wants Carol to let go of her anxieties, to just go and enjoy life, which is exactly what they do.
Okay.
I think everyone could use a good Shirley in their lives. The unification of the chaotic divine feminine and the orderly divine masculine is brought to a head when Frank, the catalyst archetype, shows up to set the wheels in motion.
I'm gonna give my queer neighbor a lift to Baltimore.
Okay.
And while Carol is reluctant to go on the trip, Carol is obligated to go with Melvin, just as Melvin is obligated to win Carol over.
Here's a little suitcase. Shocked that it's being used.
Carol arrives for the trip clad in a green shirt with flowers on it, symbolic of her status as the chaotic divine feminine, while Melvin wears a shirt of bright red, the color of love, as he seems determined to make a positive impact on Carol and win her heart during this trip, God help him.
Thank you for being on time.
Because the convertible is the violet color coded for anxiety, as it is inside Frank's convertible where both Melvin and Simon will reveal their deep inner wounds related to their fathers. Simon spills to Carol and Melvin the story of his coming out and falling out with his parents. The scene in the car is also where we receive a tidbit about Melvin's relationship with his hard-nosed father.
My father didn't come out of his room for 11 years. He used to hit me on the hands with a yardstick if I made a mistake playing the piano.
And while Melvin's upbringing swayed him too far toward the aggressive, dominant side of the masculine scale, it is the statement he makes about good times and noodle salad that gets the ball rolling toward Simon ending his own self-pity party, so he may embody some of these traits himself, to be re-illuminated in the light of the divine feminine.
Tomorrow you'll see if you can get another big wad of sweaty money out of his hand.
When they arrive at the hotel, Melvin asks Simon,
Ever get an erection over a woman? Wouldn't your life be easier if you weren't?
You consider your life easy?
Here they establish that no matter what, life is rough, whether you're playing the game from one direction or the other.
All right. I give you that.
It's worth stating that in today's culture, seeing homosexual characters represented in mass media is a very common thing. But in 1997, to have a gay character so prominently portrayed in a major blockbuster was a brave and novel decision. It's also respectable that the character is portrayed without the over-the-top characterization placed on many gay characters in films back in the 90s, but is instead executed with the highest level of respect, class, and unassailable dignity, much of which is due to the skill and passion that Greg Kinnear brings to the role. Melvin takes Simon's previous point with grace, and then makes a point to show that these two guys really aren't that different and might even become old friends.
Nice packing.
Now, there's an unfortunate reversal of anxieties that takes place after they get to the hotel. But the car conversation causes Melvin to relive the memories of his oppressive father, and this seems to activate Melvin's worst OCD tendencies. Opposingly, Carol receives good news from home that deactivates her sexually repressed side and hyperactivates her feminine sexuality. The bright red dress she wears to dinner and the way she plays with the young bartender, forcing him to pursue her across the dance floor, shows her feminine playfulness has returned, and she is clearly in the mood for love. Melvin, however, is overwhelmed by anxiety. Melvin's OCD is out of whack. He makes Carol wait an excessively long time while he gets ready, and then again when he refuses to accept a jacket from the restaurant. Things continue to go badly the second they sit down as Melvin blindly insults her dress.
They make me buy a new outfit. They let you in a house dress.
A bad habit of his when his OCD is out of whack. The scorned feminine, who is open and eager for love, is pissed, and rightfully so. Melvin is screwing up big time.
Pay me a compliment, Melvin. I need one.
Melvin's compliment is actually kind of perfect. He basically admits that he suffers from erectile dysfunction, but says he's started taking a pill to help with it. In other words,
you make me want to be a better man.
Melvin's admission makes Carol feel wanted on a sexual level by a strong masculine entity. They kiss, and Melvin is way ahead. But of course, a couple sentences later, his poor choice of words kills the mood and sends Carol packing to the hotel. This is Melvin's down and out moment, when all seems lost. Now, earlier in the film, Simon talks to Skeet Ulrich about his process.
You ever watch somebody who doesn't know that you're watching them, and you see this flash come over them? They're just sort of realer and they're more alive. I mean, you look at someone long enough, you discover their humanity.
When Carol returns to the hotel, she finds Simon stewing in anxiety over seeing his parents the next day.
How are you?
But as she prepares to take a bath, Simon has another moment of inspiration, this time as he watches Carol, sitting at the edge of the bathtub, preparing to go in. We can draw comparisons between the relationship between Carol and her son Spencer, and Simon and his unnamed mother, as both relationships suggest a slightly Oedipal situation. The story of Oedipus is that of a young king who unknowingly murders his father and marries his mother. Carol's preoccupation with her son's illness prevents her from developing a relationship, as Carol admits to her mother earlier in the film,
Which is probably why I make poor Spencer hug me more than he wants to. Poor kid doesn't have enough problems he has to make up for his mom not getting any.
her son has been acting as a sort of stand-in for the lack of masculine energy in her life. In a similar vein did Simon come to irreconcilable differences with his father due to the unnatural artistic relationship Simon had with his mother. The connection between Carol and Simon in the second half of the film is the reconciliation of these two psychological frameworks. By Simon choosing to draw Carol nude, he is rediscovering his ability to create and connect with the divine feminine in a more appropriate manner, partially influenced by the presence of the divine masculine, Melvin Udall, in his life. The way Simon aggressively rips the cast from his arm can be seen as a manifestation of powerful masculine energy, which heals him of his wounds and allows him to start painting again. We can assume if Riddell were there, he would certainly choose Simon in this moment, bacon or no bacon. And Carol, by choosing to model for Simon, is exemplifying divine feminine sexuality, the beautiful and sexual and desired, not for the purposes of taking care of a child, but to encapsulate pure feminine traits, the ones she laughed off during her failed date, now made serious, sensual, and real. This is Carol removing the shroud of the sexually repressed single mother, owning and leaning into being a sexualized woman. The line,
"You're why cavemen chiseled on walls,"
illustrates Simon's appreciation for her divine feminine sexuality. And while Simon won't be giving her any concrete sexual attention, he provides the emotional attention she is looking for, that she needs.
What I need, he gave me. Great.
The completion of Simon's arc is punctuated by him calling his parents the next day, turning down his mother's offer for money, and bidding them farewell. The drive back to the city is a quiet one, and while Carol and Simon have created a friendship that might last, Melvin is even further from earning the respect of the divine feminine than he was before they left.
Don't say anything.
Now, through Melvin's decision to allow Simon to move in with him, we can see that Melvin has come full circle, even if his anxieties blocked him from showing this to Carol. But we see that the homophobia, racism, sexism, and harshness of Melvin was nothing more than a protective facade. The way he was taught to be by his hard-hearted father, but not the truth of his own heart.
I love you.
I'd be the luckiest guy alive if that did it for me.
And Simon truly comes full circle here as he takes the aggressive, masculine position. He berates and encourages Melvin to be bold and courageous to win Carol's heart.
Do something about it. Go over there. Now, tonight. Don't sleep on it.
Before he leaves the apartment, Melvin realizes he's failed to lock the door in his usual obsessive manner, a sign that his anxieties and the sanctity of the orderliness of his world are fading.
Forgot to lock the door.
The next scene illustrates that perhaps the necessary ingredients to achieve union between order and chaos are acceptance, faith, and love. Melvin tries to make his case to Carol, but he fumbles over his words and talks in circles, which causes her to say,
Why can't I just have a normal boyfriend? Why? Just a regular boyfriend who doesn't go nuts on me.
To which her wise mother advises her,
Everybody wants that, dear. It doesn't exist.
Beverly is saying that no matter what, there will always be conflict, opposing viewpoints, and struggle in a relationship. But not only is this true of all relationships, it's actually a necessary component, as it is the inequities and the strengths and weaknesses of the respective members that complement and strengthen each other as individuals, and creates the perfect union when the couple is viewed as a whole. Carol and Melvin both seem to accept this. On their late night walk, Carol, of course, wears a green sweater. Carol actually calls Melvin out for his OCD as he tries to miss the cracks in the street. And this is the faith element, where even though the two members of the union accept that things may not be perfect right now, they have faith in each other to continue to work to be better people. Melvin finally manages to give Carol the ultimate compliment.
I might be the only person on the face of the earth that knows you're the greatest woman on earth. And the fact that I get it makes me feel good about me.
Their first kiss is awkward and stilted, just like their first attempts at most things in the film, but the second attempt seems to be a winner. The final shot shows Melvin and Carol walk into a just opened bakery. Here, the couple is bordered in red, the unified masculine and feminine making home inside this rubicund container of love, a visual container, just like the one Melvin was kept on the outside of at the beginning of the film. Melvin Udall has found what he was searching for, the end of the sentence which we can now finish for him. Love was compromise. Love was surrender. Love was accepting the things that were not in order to embrace what might be good for us. And maybe love is as simple as a pan of warm rolls, fresh out of the oven. Director JamesLBrooks became the talk of the town when this film was released. Nicholson and Hunt won Oscars for Best Actor and Actress, and they nearly took home the award for Best Film, edged out by the massive sweeper of 1997, James Cameron's Titanic. Audiences were eager to see how Mr. Brooks would follow up, and while his next two films, the 2004 Spanglish and the 2010 How Do You Know, both show glimpses of the brilliance that made As Good As It Gets so timeless and classic, neither film would end up living up to the perfection in writing, acting, and meaning as Good As It Gets. At the end of the day, As Good As It Gets is a simple human story about three imperfect characters who overcome their imperfections, create better ways of living, and forge relationships that help them overcome their psychological anxieties, all executed without falling into the sappy, saccharine, overly soft mechanics that most blockbuster romantic comedies fall into. In my opinion, this is one of the greatest films of the 1990s, a true one-of-a-kind masterpiece. For this reason, As Good As It Gets has been deemed sincerely worthy of a cinema love letter. Leave a like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Let us know what you thought in the comment section, and until next time, thanks for watching.
Always look at the bright side of your life.